From the Ear to There Travel Studio, this is the Ear to There Disney Podcast.
What can I say except you're stuck home and you need a little Disney fix? Hey, it's okay, you're not alone, and that's why Phil's doing this.
That's fun. Here to record, here to talk all about our favorite creepy, both intentionally creepy and unintentionally creepy attractions in the Disney parks is my friend. She started out amazingly as a podcast listener, and then we became friends, and she was a client, and now she works with Ear to There Travel. It's been a really fun ride. My friend Carol, and I'm going to pronounce your name incorrectly again, Jatine, right? Jatine. How do you
got it, Phil. You got it.
How do you actually say your last name again?
Well, I'm Brazilian, so in Portuguese we say Jatene.
Yeah,
and it's an Arabic surname, so actually it's Jaitan, or Jaitan, depending on who's speaking. But I've been living in English-speaking countries for a while, and I've gotten quite used to being Carolina Jatine. Yeah. And absolutely, you can call me Carol, which is what everybody calls me. Nobody calls me Carolina.
And I called you Carolina, and you said it's actually Carolina.
Yeah, Carolina, if you want to pronounce it really well. But again, I'm
your
quite used to being called
that is not coming out of my mouth even a little bit. I'm going to try. So thank you so much for being on the show. This is really exciting because we've known each other for how long now? 3-4 years, something like that?
I think it's been 4 years, hasn't it?
It
was 2017 or 2016 that I reached out to you for the first time.
That's super exciting. I'm so happy to have you on, and it's cool that we can do these shows. I know we were talking a little bit before we hit record. Like, listen, it's a crazy time, and if we could just do fun stuff once a day, 45 minutes or an hour or so, and just talk Disney until the parks are back open. This is this kind of stuff that I live for. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too. I mean, Disney has gotten me through a lot of tough times. And every single time I've had a struggle or I've had to spend a lot of time at home. I hit a rough patch a while back where I was doing a lot of independent consulting and working from home, and thinking about going to Disney and dreaming about Disney actually really helped keep my spirits up. So I think it could help a lot of people.
Agreed. Totally agree. So people don't know you, so let's introduce you a little bit. What is your history with Disney, with the parks? When did you go for the first time, and how often do you go these days?
So I've always been a huge Disney buff. So when I was young, my parents really wanted me to be bilingual. They really wanted me to speak fluent English. And one of the rules that they implemented in my household way back in the day when I was very small was, Disney movies are only going to enter this house in the original language. That means no subtitles, because English is not my first language. Portuguese is. So no subtitles, no dubbed movies. So I basically, when I was very young and I hadn't gone to Walt Disney World and I'd never been to the United States, I had to wait until friends of the family went and brought me the VHS from Disney. So one of the things that I was very excited about, I used to have my Disney sing-along songs that there was a special Disneyland park.
I have that. We had that one.
Oh, I still from time to time search for that on YouTube and watch it. It's like the biggest nostalgia that you can instill on me is having me watch that one.
Walking right down the middle of Main Street, USA. It's the greatest.
Yeah.
Roger
and
Rabbit.
And Ghosts as well, which when I was very small, I used to skip it because I was scared of
my
the
sister. See, you're closer to my younger sister's age than my age, and she got that. So my uncle gave that to her, gave her the VHS when we were planning our first ever trip. She was little. She had just gone through surgery. She had brain tumor. She had a brain tumor. She's fine. She's fine. She's fine. She's fine. She's got an almost 2-year-old now. She's married. She's good. Never had a problem, but had 2 crazy brain operations. And back then, this was like 1990, 91. So you're looking at, it's not like the minimally invasive, surgeries they have now. It was a big, big, big deal. So anyway, make a long story short, my uncle gave her the tape, the VHS tape, and she watched it on a loop for months before we went. So I know that thing from beginning to end. You know what's really funny is we got it for Alexa when she was little, and there's the French version. We didn't even know. The French version of that is on the DVD as well. And so she would watch the English version and then make us put on the French version, even though none of us speak French even a little bit. I think Amy would pretend she does, but she's terrible. I'll tell her I said that. But anyway, yeah, that's it.
I will. Don't worry.
Yeah, that's
French is a hard thing.
Well, no, that goes. I mean, it's so funny that you mention it because I didn't grow up with it, but it was definitely on a lot when I was like, 8, 9, 10 years old.
Yeah, so it really affected me. But there was also something else now that I remember, and I don't know if you recall this, but a lot of Disney VHS at the time, and they had two types. They had one with the little triangle that was.
Oh yeah. Yep, I remember that. You did a really good job with that, by the way. That's impressive.
Yeah, so they had that one, and then they switched to the Disney Classics collection, and that was about halfway through my childhood. But they used to have Walt Disney World commercials, and I don't know if you remember that as well, but they used to play that before the movies.
I do remember that, yeah.
As the commercials, and I remember there was one with two little boys packing for Disney, I think, really in advance, and this older brother telling his younger brother, Goofy is huge.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It's this big on TV.
Now I want to find that on YouTube and put it on this episode, but I probably won't because I need to get the episode out today, so I probably won't. But I know exactly what you mean. And and
then it would end it with, "There's never been a better time to make your dream come true." Like, it was always the same thing. So it created, I'm talking as if it had been ages, but I actually went for the first time when I was 7 years old to Walt Disney World. I was an only child at the time. My sister's 12 and a half years younger than me. So I went to Disney for a long time, just me. So I went once when I was 12, and then again when I was 9, and then again when I was 10 or 11. I'm not so sure, but that was the last time I went as an only child. And then we had a break because my sister was very, very young.
Siblings.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and when she went, she was 4, and she had a great time, but it was hard to conciliate. She cried through the lines of every single ride and then wanted to go again as soon as it ended. That was basically the pattern. But anyway, my family likes a very specific type of Disney trip. We tried to go every other year. Sometimes we did every year and a half, and sometimes we did more again. Like when my sister was little, we didn't go. And as my sister and I got older, it became a little bit more dispersed. But we tried to do very long trips. My father in particular, he really likes his days off at Disney. He likes to take a break. He just buys a 10-base park ticket. We travel all the way from Brazil, so it's very far. But he likes to be able to sit at a restaurant with air conditioning. We always go like when it's July, summer, because it was always somebody was at school, either myself or my sister. We were always at school. So we have a very specific way of doing Disney. My family, we like to stay long. We like to repeat the parks, and we like to do things calmly. So I've sort of brought that into my life. I haven't been with my family in quite some time, and my sister is now living in the United States, and she's going on her own. She was just there, actually. She was there right up until the parks closed. Avoiding Fantasmic and trying not to get big crowds, which didn't go so well, but she was already there. So, that's basically my history. I've been going since I was a little girl. I think I've done 11 trips already, and one to Disneyland Paris because I lived in France for a little while. So I had the pleasure of visiting that park. And I've done one trip to Disneyland, my first, for my honeymoon just now. My husband and I did a very geeky honeymoon. We went to the D23 Expo. It just happened to coincide with our wedding. And then we spent 4 days at Disneyland. And that was basically our honeymoon. It was 8 days of full on Disney with a few days in between just as a break.
Yeah, that was, and I got to hang out with you a little bit there at the expo when we were there. That was very cool.
Yeah, we got to hang out at the D23 Expo. We actually did the parks presentation of everything that was coming to Epcot, and we saw the mock of the train for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway together. And we were still waiting, I remember, for the announcements of what was new at Epcot. And I remember I was hoping that it was a Brazil pavilion because that's been rumored for years, but it was the Mary Poppins ride, which I have no complaints about.
I hope they don't cut. I'm praying they don't cut that out with all the
God, I didn't even think about that.
Anyway, let's keep the news happy. Let's move on. Yeah. Let's move right past that too. We're going to talk about the creepiest attractions and oh Ray, I have creepy music ready. So I love the sound effects. It's so much fun. So. And I kind of left it up to you to make the list for the creepy attractions. And because I think I've done a scary attractions episode around Halloween a couple of years ago. But I think creepy and scary are really two different things, especially when you get into the unintentionally creepy stuff. So I think, rides like, I'm sure, well, I don't want to spoil any of your list, but like, for example, like I know this one's going to come up. Rides like Tower of Terror is creepy on purpose, but there's some that are, especially in Disneyland, I think, that are kind of just leftover from early days and just super creepy accidentally.
Yeah. So I actually, I wanted to do the creepy factor because I have a very specific relationship with creepy rides, and I sorted my information in intentionally creepy and unintentionally creepy. And what I would do is cover the intentionally one first and explain why, I have a different perspective on this. It's because these are rides that, I think there's a difference between a ride being creepy in a fun way and a ride being creepy in this stayed with me and I'm going to go on Wikipedia and read about the story behind this ride because it's super creepy. And there's also a difference between, the reactions you have to a ride matter. And the reason I'm saying that is because I used to be terrified of the Haunted Mansion when I was a child. And I was so terrified of Tower of Terror that I actually had a fever after the ride. I really did not want to go into that ride when I was already in there, so I ended up going anyway. And I was staying at a hotel at the time, and I was really scared. It was a very complicated experience. And now those are my two favorite rides. So I just think it's funny how that develops. It's sort of, it's you are scared of it as a child, and then you sort of learn to love it, and it almost feels earned that you love those rides because you have a history with them where you sort of overcame a fear and started to really enjoy the ride. It's almost more gratifying. And then there are the unintentionally creepy ride, and I will make my case for every single one of those of why I find them creepy, even though they're not supposed to be. And I also love all of the rides that I have on my list as unintentionally creepy as well. I just think that they have a bit of an edge that is not meant to have that sort of effect on people. So that's my rationale behind it.
All right, let's get into it then. So give us your first, let's go intentionally creepy list first, and then we'll go unintentionally creepy, because I think that one has a potential to be a little funnier.
Yeah, absolutely. So the intentionally creepy list, I one of the reasons why I thought about this was the Phantom Manor in Disneyland Paris. I know like a lot of the people who are listening haven't been, many of them have, it's not one of our standard Disneylands. It's not one of the ones in the United States. But the reason I point this one out is because it's very similar and very different to the Haunted Mansion. And I mentioned this, I touched on this briefly, that was a ride that I went on expecting the Haunted Mansion, and it actually really disturbed me. I was already an adult when I went on this ride, and it's got an actual storyline, and it's got characters, and it's scary. It's got a very disturbing story, and one of the things that most impresses me is that the story of the Phantom Manor in Paris, it's linked to the park. So the tale behind it is that the owner, the person who discovered the treasures in Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, Mr. Ravenswood, I believe. He's the owner of that mansion. He lives there with he used to live there with his family. And his daughter, Melanie, was a child when he dug into Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, and now is a beautiful woman. And they have two different stories. The first is that there are spirits who guarded the treasure in Big Thunder Mountain Railroad that are extremely angered by the fact that Mr. Ravenswood dug so deep. And the other side of it is that the father of this girl, Melanie, does not want her to get married, and she has a lot of suitors. So what he has been doing is he's been accused, through rumor, of killing all her suitors. And the stretching room actually shows her standing next to a man, then he disappears, and as the room stretches, you find out how that man died. And then as you go in to the haunted mansion, a story unfolds where you have this bride all alone roaming around a very haunted mansion. And a lot of the scenes that you see in the haunted mansion at Disneyland or at Walt Disney World, they're altered to include the bride. So, for example, the ballroom scene is the same, except there's a bride with a very creepy phantom standing behind her, watching all these ghosts invade her house. And it's actually quite sad. And the story behind it is that on the day of her wedding, her husband disappeared. And she's been roaming around the mansion for God knows how long. Nobody has ever been there again. Nobody knows if she's still alive. And she's waiting for her husband to come back to marry her. And he never has. So it's just a different, and the phantom that nobody knows if it's her father or a phantom from Big Thunder Mountain Railroad has invaded the house and invited a bunch of demons and ghosts to live there with her, and she's still in the house. So it is quite a frightening story. You go through the whole thing, and at the end you see a bride's corpse. That's the last thing you see on that ride. I found it quite interesting, but overly creepy even for haunted mansion standards, because haunted mansion, you sort of see all these ghosts and they're kind of fun, they're grim grinning ghosts, and you leave, I think smaller children get a little bit frightened sometimes, but overall you leave happily. This one you sort of leave wanting to know more about the story and slightly disturbed.
I love that. I think that is amazing. And as you were reading or telling me the story, and I didn't know much about it because I've never been there. So I was just reading kind of along and looking it up. And it even has what word am I looking for? The origin of the story even goes all the way back to Thunder Mesa when Mark Davis was planning Thunder Mesa for Walt Disney World, which of course was never built because everybody in Florida wanted a Pirates of the Caribbean attraction, so they put that on hold. And then that story that was supposed to be like an underlying thing for Thunder Mesa in Walt Disney World was held, and Disney never gets rid of ideas. So they used that story of, what's his name? Ravenswood. Henry Ravenswood and his daughter for Disneyland. It's I love that stuff. And I love that. Listen, Walt Disney World, Disneyland's Haunted Mansion, to say there's no backstory is probably wrong, but there's not a full story there. It just became like this combination of all these ideas over the years from, Rolly Crump and Yale Gracie and Sam McKim and all these other legendary Disney names who worked on the mansion. They basically put 1,000 effects into the darn thing, and this is what you got. But this one, I love, Imagineering is known for telling stories, and that's an awesome story, and it's creeping me out. And I'm going to show my kids this today. We're going to do the ride.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the virtual ride through.
Just reading about it. Yeah. It's really creepy story.
Something about a bride who isn't still in a wedding dress waiting for her husband and may or may not be dead. And that freaks me out. That's freaky. You know what? I've said this before on the show. There's a part of the Haunted Mansion. There's one part of that entire attraction that actually gets me nervous every single time. And I know you know what I'm talking about as soon as I say it. You're going down a narrow corridor and there are all these doors and the door handles are moving.
Yes.
That always creeped me out. And it still does. Whenever I go through there now, as an adult I'm 41 years old. I have 3 kids who are with me and I'm looking at that and I'm like, this is freaking me out because I don't know why. There's something about somebody on the other side of that door and you don't know who it is and they're trying to get in. That scares me. And it's just something, I don't know why. My house has never been broken into. I've never had that happen to me, but it's creepy.
It is creepy. I think the unknown is always creepy. And I find that, I would just add to that the part with the doors is always the creepiest one for me. And also it goes into that hallway with the candelabra on its own. And I do think that that's the creepiest image of the Haunted Mansion. It's just a great combination of spooky and fun. I find that the Phantom Manor in Paris is mostly just spooky. It's got Madame Leota. It's got the graveyard, but very different because the phantoms there are very different. But, if you add these ghosts dancing in the ballroom with an actual human being there, and it's their house, and it's overrun by ghosts, it just completely changes the tone of the thing. It's no longer ghosts having fun anymore. It's ghosts tormenting a person.
Yeah, that's giving me chills right now thinking about that. I'm actually looking at goosebumps on I'm looking at goosebumps on my arm right now. That's creepy stuff. I love that. It's such, oh man. See, this is what makes I have to get out to Disneyland Paris, of course. Might be a while at this point, but I need to get out there and go see it. Did you have anything else on this one or the Haunted Mansion, or do you want to move on to your next one?
I think we can move on to the next one. I mean, the Haunted Mansion is my favorite ride. I could talk about it forever, but you've covered it on the podcast already. And I think that we've covered it. Unless you have any questions, I mean, I'm pretty fresh on the Phantom Manors. If you want to ask about any specific.
No, I just want to. Oh, one question I do have. Yeah, I do have one for you. So you've been out there, and I don't know what it looks like from the outside because I haven't been there. What is it? Is it a dilapidated old mansion, or is it a like in Walt Disney World, or is it a stately kind of home like it is in Disneyland?
It's sort of a mix. It's not as pretty as the one in Disneyland, and it definitely looks a little bit more rustic. The outside is unkept, probably not as unkept as the Imagineers envisioned it. I actually did read that some Imagineers did have trouble with that because they didn't like how the mansion looked, and they thought that Walt would have hated it. So there was a little bit of debate going on about how it should look, much like the other Haunted Mansions. What I find interesting about that one is that it feels much more like you're going into a house just because the line, it goes through the garden, which is, again, a very unkept garden. And then as you just move over, through the stairs, all the way up to the outside of the house, and you go in through the front door and you walk on the porch of the house. It's a wooden porch.
That's cool.
A big wooden porch, that goes around. So it really does feel like you're going into a house more than the other Haunted Mansions where you sort of go in through the side. Or even the one at Disneyland where, it's also a little bit more like a house. But just walking into that creaky wooden porch for an extended period of time around the house sort of gives you that vibe. There's also a little bit more of a walkthrough than the others. You walk in, and after the stretching room, there's a hallway, there's a stretching room, and then there's a corridor with the creepy paintings that you walk through before you actually get to the Doom Boogie.
That's really
so
cool.
It just takes you spend a lot more time in what feels like a house.
So,
in my opinion,
if you're in Disneyland, there's so and we got to get off of Mansion in a second. We could do a whole episode just on Mansion, but
yeah.
So you had mentioned the Disneyland, like Walt wouldn't have liked the thing. So when they were building the exterior for the Disneyland one, Walt wanted, the concept. Sam and Kim came up of this haunted house on a hill concept, and it was very old looking, very dilapidated, very beat up looking, and Walt didn't like it because, listen, it was Disneyland. Everything in Disneyland is pristine and clean, and it just wasn't going to work in his park. But so they changed it to the version that you see today. But if you go before you get to the Haunted Mansion, you walk through New Orleans Square, and the best spot is to the left. If you're facing the mansion, to the left of that is where there's like a little. It's not a garden, but it's a little kind of alcove. And if you stand there and you look up to the top floor of the Haunted Mansion, everything else is beautiful, except in the window of the top floor, there are these really dirty, tattered curtains. And that's the only thing that looks creepy or dirty or like anything haunted from the outside. And that is a nod to Sam and Kim's original drawing of the Haunted Mansion, to his concept.
That's really nice.
So that's really cool. So they have one little nod to what he believed it was going to look like. All right, so let's move on to your second one. Let's talk about your second intentionally creepy one.
Tower of Terror in Orlando, of course.
I got to play the music one more time. So go ahead. I want to play the music behind you while you talk.
Well, that is actually the thing that I find most creepy.
Yeah.
It's that low music that sort of feels like the piano isn't quite tuned. And everywhere I go where there's similar music, I instantly think about the Tower of Terror, and I'm instantly creeped out.
I feel that's so funny is that music is some of the creepiest music anywhere in the parks. And it you're right. That's it. This is a weird one because it's intentionally, intentionally creepy, right? Like it's intentionally because it's made by Imagineers to kind of unsettle you when you're in the queue. But it's supposed to also be the music that would have been left on at this hotel, Hollywood, 1939 Halloween night. So that in that way, it's not intentionally creepy. But then, of course, it's weird. It's like this weird. You're like going through Inception, like the movie, with like all these different levels of spookiness with that. You're right. There's so many times I've been in an elevator or something, and music that sounds like that comes on. I go, oh, this is creepy. Like that's like it feels just like Tower of Terror. You're exactly right.
They've completely changed. They've changed elevator music for a whole generation, forever, basically.
No, I love it, and I love the walking into the lobby and the how do you say it, mahjong game that was left on the table, and the umbrellas and the hats and the suitcases.
It is very Twilight Zone to just leave. It really captures the feeling of the TV show, and I'm a fan of the Twilight Zone.
I love the Twilight Zone.
And that idea that things were left as they were.
Yeah.
For all these years, exactly where people left them, and you sort of left wondering, but where did these people go? Yeah. Why did they take their stuff? Why are all the suitcases there? What happened? And I do think that for people who got to go to the Tower of Terror when it had just opened, and there were no fast passes, we took the big line, and we had never been on this ride before, or even it was still novelty, and you take that line all through that creepy hotel, and it's still a new thing to you, and you take the line inside that hotel, and you really get to see it, because now you sort of rush past a lot of that. I mean, I haven't been on the Tower of Terror without a fast pass in a really long time. But if you take that in, it was, I think, one of the first lines at Walt Disney World that is so, for such an extended period of time, and it profited a lot from the area, that had so much theming that actually, that you can take in. It's sort of part of the ride. You're sort of waiting to get into this creepy hotel. The Haunted Mansion does that, and I think now their line is even more thematic, but at that time it wasn't quite as much because of that music and because of that theming that they have on that ride. That empty hotel entrance, that lobby, it really sets the tone for what you're about to experience. And if you're forced to stay in line and linger there for a while, just staring at all that emptiness somebody left there, it really sets the tone. It really gets you in to the mood of the ride, in my opinion.
It does. And like you were saying, like when you walk through like the gardens and the empty fountains that, used to be running. And then Amy, for some reason, I just remembered, she makes fun of the way I say fountains. There's two ends in there and she drives me crazy. Anyway, because I say fountain and she's like, it's fountain. And I'm like, no, it's not how you say it. There's an end in there. Anyway, but when you're walking through and the music and the overgrown plants, and it was supposed to be this once like beautiful, lush, like resort, and now
you can see it. You can see that it was once a beautiful resort.
Yeah, like the tile work and all that, and it's so well done. I think, and I've said this on the show a lot, that attraction starts when you first make that turn onto Sunset Boulevard, and you first get on that street and you look down at the tower in the distance, and you can hear it, the screams of people, and at night it's even better because the lights are on and it's this orangish kind of building in the back, looming in the distance. And oh man, I just thought of, I don't know if you had ever seen this. I don't know if it's still there. I don't think it is. There's the letter board that tells you all the places, like the Stardust Room, the penthouse, the mezzanine.
Yes,
and
it's still there, right?
That's still there. But there used to be, I think they took it out because it would hold up the line of people getting into the pre-show. There were letters missing, and like Stardust Room was missing a T, library was missing an R, and if you look down at the bottom, like in between where the board is and the glass is, if you look down, the letters that had fallen off made a little sentence. It said, on the bottom, all the ones that had fallen off said, "Evil Tower, you are doomed." From all the letters that fell down.
I didn't know that. That gave me chills.
Yeah, it was really cool. So I remember that on my college program. We're going back 20 some years, 21 years, 22 years now. Holy God, man! I got old all of a sudden. That was fast. But if you look down, you can see Evil Tower. You are the letters. You are doomed. All would be lined up right. And you couldn't see it unless you looked for it. And I think that's probably why they took it out, because people were just always looking for it. Kind of like the key under the mat at Muppets, but not freaky. The Muppets is fun. This is actually a little scary. So I was also going to point out that there's a person standing at the window that you can see from the back, especially when you're walking back from Fantasmic. You can see someone standing at the window of the Tower of Terror. Did you know that? I don't know that. I did not know that one.
Yeah, I'm trying to find. It's a woman apparently, and she has a name, and I'm just trying to find her name because it just occurred to me when you said about the letters. I know for a fact, and you can Google it, like person standing in the window, and I've taken pictures. It's very hard to photograph. You need a really good camera. But they're definitely there. They're definitely standing on the back, staring out the window. Oh, I just want to get that person's name. What?
I just found it. I was just looking it up. It is a silhouette. There's videos on YouTube that have. Oh, that's creepy. All right, for the listener who hasn't seen this, you have to Google it. There's YouTube videos that I have up on my screen right now, and yeah, it's an individual standing in the window, and you can really see them in the dark. Wow, that's creepy.
Yeah,
cool.
You can see them. It's very creepy. It's just that level, that attention to detail, because it's almost like the Tower of Terror is a character. It's so big and it's so there, and it creeps you out. You just can't ignore it.
You know what doesn't creep me out? You know what drives me crazy about Tower of Terror? Are the bells in the darn gift shop. Can we get rid of the bells? Because every time you walk through, you have like this creepy experience. You walk in, there's 50 kids like ding, 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 hitting the bells in there. It drives me crazy. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I mean, it didn't drive me crazy, but now it definitely will. My next
All right, let's move on to the next one. What's your next one?
Ooh, I have two more things to point out before. I don't want to extend this for too long. The first one, I will say, just two shout outs for the Hollywood Tower Hotel, as in it makes a difference. Okay. The first one is when you go up, that they actually show you a hotel hallway. Yeah. Creeped me out as a kid. I mean, the fact that they maintain that this is a hotel, before they turn all the lights out and have the little window float and crash, which is insanely creepy. That hotel hallway, scared me for years when I was a child. I was scared to stay at a hotel for years thanks to that. It's just a very realistic hotel hallway. And again, you can tell that it was a glamorous one. And the second shout out is to the script of that ride, which I still think, rivals the Haunted Mansion in creepy. Next time you check into a deserted hotel on the dark side of Hollywood, make sure you know just what kind of vacancy you're filling. Yeah, that is some really well written, creepy stuff. And so I just wanted to give it a shout out.
I want to do the Rod Serling. I can't do it well, but it in the beginning on the dark and stormy night, like Hollywood, 1939. I love that stuff. And it's so well done.
It is amazing. It is just, it's really addicting. I know the entire ride by heart just because I love the script for that ride. Yeah, it's so just so creepy and so incredible. And I think learning the script, actually, it's my recommendation for those of you with kids who are scared of the ride. Get them to learn the script because it's such a brilliant script. And if you can say it along with him, it just like you feel empowered,
So kids, it takes a lot of convincing to get Jack on attractions. This is one that he won't do. So we'll have to see. We switched our April trip to June. So hopefully everything will be up and running and good to go by then. And I'm hoping to get him on because he's never ridden it. So we'll have to try. We'll have to try this.
Maybe it'll be his favorite ride one day. You can get me on that ride either. I went once when I was 9, and then I only went back when I was 14.
Yeah, maybe it will. We'll see. I don't give him.
It was the fall. It was. I love my partner does not go on the ride because of the fall. He does not like falls. He really doesn't want to go.
That he wouldn't do Guardians out in California because it's one of my favorites. That is like he would. Yeah, no, he didn't do it. Actually, yeah, that's another thing. Another shout out. I mean, I will always like Tower of Terror better, but I actually really enjoyed Mission Breakout as well. We get to keep them both. I hope it doesn't become just one or the other. No, I don't think Walt Disney World can change theirs. It's too good. It's too classic. I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah, thank God. I hope so.
let's move on. What else do you have for intentionally creepy?
So I got so excited over Tower of Terror. I'm going to have to check my list now. Again, I'm going through my childhood traumas here. Alien Encounter.
Oh my God. Yeah. So good.
Alien Encounter. I wish they'd just closed it a little later so that I could experience it as an adult. Because I was terrified of that one when I was a kid. Absolutely terrified. And, it basically made me scared of the Great Movie Ride because I knew the alien was there too. And I waited. It was just such a good ride. I think that it is one that there's no way to get a kid that is scared into that ride. Oh, no. It's very difficult because when I was little, I wanted to grab onto my father when I was scared of the rides. You can't do that on Alien Encounter. You have to stay put, and you really do feel like you're on your own. And it's the only ride I know I've ever seen that actually builds off the fear around you. You're just in pitch black. And you're feeling things and you're hearing things, but you're also hearing the people around you screaming and reacting. Yep. And that also contributes to the ride. It's not just what's happening in the ride. It's, that ability that this ride had to produce a feeling that is very similar to what you get in the movie of I can't see anything. I don't know what's going on. And I don't know if people are being picked off around me and I can't move.
Yeah.
I have nowhere to go. It's just a very intelligent concept of creating chills. And I wish that we could just experience it one more time because it really was an amazing ride.
I miss it. I miss that one. I remember doing it for the first time and being pretty shocked that it was in Magic Kingdom. Like, it was shocking. Like, it was that scary. And, you know, I've talked about the backstory before that it was going to be Nostromo from Alien, the ship. And the alien, it was going to be like actually the Alien movie. And the alien that was going to be in the chamber there was going to be the one from the movie, right? From the movie Alien. And then something happened where they couldn't get the licensing rights and they ended up making up their own alien, which was even creepier than the alien in the movie. And just everything about it, you're right, the being stuck where you were and hearing the screams and then the poor attendant, the cast member that gets eaten by the alien and then you get sprayed with, I guess it's his blood, like it was awesome and everybody's screaming and yelling and crying and I missed that. That was so much fun. And then Stitch, they brought in Stitch and it was just it
completely killed the whole theming of everything the ride was about because I mean Stitch is mischievous. He's not a xenomorph.
Yeah. I like using the xenomorph. Look at that. I'm using the actual terminology is pretty cool. I'm a
nerd, Phil. You know that. I have a reputation to uphold.
Oh yeah. No, but Stitch, you're right. Stitch was listen, I like Stitch. I like the movie. It just didn't make sense to have him. I understand why they did it. It was scary. Kids would ride it, never ride it again because it would have nightmares. But man, was it good. It was such a great attraction. When you do it on YouTube now, you can't, like if you go back and do it on YouTube, you can't do it justice because you had to be in that room.
Yeah, exactly. It's a ride that, I mean, I think it's the only real horror ride that I would actually call it horror and suspense. It's the only one that is able to do that because it's just such an interesting concept. And I am so sad that my sister and my spouse will never experience it because, you know, they got there too late. The ride had already changed to Stitch's Great Escape. And to be fair, my sister was 4 when she went on Stitch's Great Escape. She's a huge Stitch fan. She's now 20. And she was absolutely terrified. And we actually had to leave because it was just completely out of control. But, you know, I do. You know, nowadays she's such an adrenaline junkie and she's never going to get to go on Alien Encounter. So it is a shame. In a way, I almost wish we'd terrified her properly with the Alien Encounter and maybe we'd have scarred her for life, but at least she'd have a memory of the real ride. You know?
Oh, really?
It was really something. I didn't appreciate it when I got to go a few times when I was a child. That was one where I forced myself to go because I used to be scared of ghosts. That was my thing. So the Alien Encounter, I would go. Scared, but I would go. But I wish I had experienced it as an adult. Thankfully, I have the memory, so I'm able to understand what the ride is actually about.
Yeah. That's a classic, and it's one that I hear a lot of Disney fans and other people who have been on this podcast talk about. That's one of their favorite ones, and it's a bummer that it's gone. And it was great. It really was. Right. All right, moving on. What else do you have?
Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland.
All right. Let's hear. I want to hear your case for it.
So the reason I point this one out is because I do think that the beginning of that ride is meant to be creepy. And I think that it sets the tone. And I mentioned the Disneyland one because of that beginning with, everybody sitting outside in their little town. And, it sort of like sets the mood for a legend. But then you get all these leftovers of pirate bones and dead men tell no tales. And it sets a scene for what's to come, but it makes a point out of making it scary in a, kind of a cautionary tale, but also in kind of, it makes it a little bit more realistic. You can sort of relate it to real life pirates. They sort of changed that up a little bit. I can't remember now. Maybe you can clarify for me, but I think they changed some of the skeletons to mermaid skeletons. I know they did that in Disney World. I'm not sure.
Them out of there. I don't think the mermaids are there anymore.
Sorry?
I think they took the mermaids out. I'm pretty sure they're not there anymore.
That's the thing. Then when I went to Disney World, they were there, and now they're not. I don't know if they ever were in Disneyland.
I don't know.
I think that killed the mood a little bit, because I think the point of that beginning is to make it slightly more realistic, as in you're actually in a dead pirate area now, and these leftovers of people. Again, I'm very creeped out about things being left the way they were, and wondering what happened. Why did everything just stop? Why did you die in that position? Why did you die steering your boat?
Yeah.
What happened? It sort of gives you an impression of a curse. I don't think it's unintentional. I don't think the whole ride is creepy, but I do think the beginning, the way it sets a very low tone, and the way it's sort of feeding off of a town that exists, and right next to that town, there are all these leftover pirate bodies. It sort of makes me feel that they want you to sort of be a bit creeped out before they set a lighter tone to the ride. I don't know if you agree with me. No, what do you think, Phil?
So the way it's set up, and I keep saying ride, and I want to say attraction. So either way, I'm always a stickler for the word attraction instead of ride. I don't know why, because I'm a maniac. So the way it's set up is right in Disneyland. You get in the boat, you go around the Blue Bayou, people eating dinner, and then there's the guy on his porch playing the banjo or guitar. I think I don't know which one it is. But he has that song do 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 do, but he's playing it a lot more slowly than that. Mm-hmm. So the way I understood it, and the way I've been told that Imagineers wanted you to experience it was, this guy was a pirate, right? He now is not. He's an older man. And then he either dreams or he falls asleep or he's remembering back. And when you get on that first drop, and then you're in the caverns and with the skeletons and the like you said, the one steering the ship, and the one in his bed with the magnifying glass, and the ones that are like, the swords through them. That is his first, like, that's going back in time a little bit. Like, that's going back to what had happened to all the pirates, and how they had all been killed. And then when you get on a second drop, then you go further back in time or further back in his memory. And that's when you see the ship with Barbossa, and they're sacking the town, and they're stealing everything, and the women are chasing the pirates off with the brooms, and there's Red and all that. And then when you get to the end scene of the attraction, one of the ends, where the pirates are, they've been drinking way too much rum, and they're fighting, and they have the guns, and they're lying on top of like barrels of gunpowder and dynamite, and they're shooting at each other. That is going to end badly, and that's going to take you back to what happened in the beginning of the attraction, where they all die because they're pirates and they're horrible people. And then when you go up the ramp at the end, you're coming back into present day where you started at the Blue Bayou. That is my understanding of what that attraction's supposed to be.
Right. I didn't get that at all. I actually didn't research this one. Pirates of the Caribbean is one of my favorite attractions as well. But I do think that the beginning of this ride, down to the fact that it's cold, it does sort of send chills. And when I was a child, I was never scared of this ride, but that beginning did creep me out,
yeah.
And I do feel even the fact that it has a little drop sort of feeds into that like you said, I guess it's got more to do with the fact that this is a cautionary tale. But I do relate to the whole pirate skeleton stirring a ship as something that is supposed to be slightly creepy and slightly scary.
The police are coming for you. I just heard them in the
Oh,
background.
yeah, I mean, we are officially on lockdown here.
All right, well, you gotta watch out. Don't be doing anything wrong. You're probably
Yeah.
you're probably on the podcast. That's probably cool.
Yeah, maybe they just want to listen in. They're probably really stressed. So.
Getting an early jump on the show. No,
Yeah.
listen, I've loved this attraction. And one at Disneyland is admittedly better. It's a better attraction than one in Walt Disney World. It's longer. It tells a more complete story. It's a little creepier at the beginning, like you said, there's more skeletons. It's so good. And see, I was never afraid of it either. My oldest, Alexa, rode it once when she was little, and then we thought, she loved it. So we were like, okay, she was like 3, and we're like, oh, she loved it. When she was like 5, and we went on it again, holy cow. She had a meltdown. She is not into that the second time with the skeletons and everything. So yeah, she got freaked out. But it's a classic, and it's when you first said it was one of your creepy ones, I was like, oh, it's not creepy. But then when you think about it, I'm like, yeah, it's actually pretty darn creepy.
I actually think it's creepy even for grown-ups. I do think, as you will see from later on in my list, I do think historical stuff and things that actually touch on things that actually happened and that could potentially exist, I do find that's particularly creepy. I think that fantasy is much more easy to digest.
So you're much more afraid of the the movie about the serial killer than you are about the movie about the vampire. Like it's
exactly
like it's I get it. Me too.
Yeah, it's a different type of creepy. It's definitely a different type of creepy. But I think that when there's a story to follow, it just adds a little bit more chills depending on where you go.
Yeah.
So all these rides, to some extent, have story, except for, all these attractions, sorry, except for extraterrestrial alien encounter. It doesn't really have a story. It's more of a mood, an experience, I would say. But I do think that when you add a story to something, it creates something creepier. And if it has a realistic historical factor to it, that's where it really gets
it makes it more real. It really does.
Yeah.
All right. Next one. What do you got?
Okay, last one. And this one will be pretty fast, pretty straightforward. I think it's one that comes to mind a lot. I do think this ride has been terrifying unsuspecting children who venture into Fantasyland for a while, but Snow White's Scary Adventures.
Yeah, no, classic, so classic and so scary that they actually had the word scary to it. It used to just be Snow White's Adventures.
And they tried to rework this ride to make it less scary, and in my opinion, to no avail.
No, it's terrifying. No, it's still scary for kids of all ages. For adults, I agree. Like when the evil queen spins around and she's the old hag, it scares me. Like if I'm on that side of the vehicle, I get nervous when that happens. So yeah, no, they didn't do a good job. It's still really scary.
I enjoy the ride very much. But I will say that when my sister was a child, again, we had a really bad experience with my sister when we took her to Walt Disney World. We started at Universal, the rival, and we had never been to Islands Adventure.
I don't know what that place is. What's that? You know what?
Exactly.
I don't know.
But long story short, there is a dinosaur ride there that has a very, very steep fall that is much bigger than Splash Mountain, and we didn't know. We didn't know that we were in line for that ride because we'd never been there, and we got told by the person in the line that it wasn't scary because my sister was crying at the front that she didn't want to go in, and she told her it was just a boat ride.
Oh, no.
And so we went thinking it was a boat ride. And not only did the ride get really scary, but then it fell, and after that we couldn't get her to trust us. She wouldn't go on anything, and everything was difficult. And we did that before we went to Disney. So we had two experiences. Either she left the ride saying, I hated that, or she left the ride wanting to immediately go back, which her favorite ride at the time was Peter Pan's Fly. But Snow White's Scary Adventures, she would say, well, what is that ride called? Snow White's Scary Adventures. She was like, there is no way I'm going in a ride in that ride.
Yeah, it's called Scary. Yeah.
And we opted to skip that one with her at the time because we didn't want her to, trust us even less, after the damage at the other parks. So that one, I do think that if your child is jumpy, if they want to go, I always think that if a child wants to go, they should go. But even for me, I do think that Snow White's Scary Adventures has a very dark fairy tale tone to it. And at least it owns it. I mean, it owns that tone. I do think it's intentionally creepy, or at least it's, it's grown into that idea. Nowadays, it knows that it's a scary ride and it advertises itself accordingly. But it's definitely has to be on my top 5.
Yeah, no, it's super scary. Yeah, my kids, they'll do it when we're in Disneyland, but they're not happy to do it. Like, it's more me because I want to do it that they're going to do it, because when you walk through and you come around the corner and you look, I don't know if you remember in the queue, and you look down and there's the window that looks down into the Evil Queen's chamber. And when we see that, my kids are like, nope. Like, you're going, let's go. It's like a 1.5 minute ride. You're going to be fine. But yeah,
I think they're big enough. I think that it's fine. Like they do need to. Sometimes children need a little push. Otherwise, you're just going to go on Peter Pan's Flight and Small World over and over and over. We did that
too. Trust me, we had those. I had those trips where we did Small World for Jack, literally 11 times.
Yeah, that was my sister with Peter Pan's Flight.
Yeah. Listen, I love Peter Pan's Flight and I love Snow White. I mean, I love it's Small World, but you got to do the other stuff too.
Of course, you have to, and it's good stuff. You want your kids to enjoy it. They need to overcome their fears. So it is important, but all in good time. And this is a ride that I think if the child is very small and jumpy, I would just skip it unless they really want to go. And then, be prepared for it. I would explain to the child that it's kind of a dark ride. It's sort of a take, but everything's going to be okay in the end,
Did you grab the apple when you were outside? Did you see that little trick?
No, I did not.
So there's when you walk in. I'm going to recommend you don't do this right now until this whole virus thing is over. Like when the park opens back up, don't do it now. But there's a brass apple on like a little podium that has the story of Snow White as you walk into the queue, like really maybe 3-5 feet into the queue. And if you touch the apple, you hear the Evil Queen scream and like howl, and it scares little kids pretty good. So of course I always have my kids do it because I'm a horrible person. But
well, one day they're going to pass. They're going to do that to their kids.
Exactly. So it's it's good. All right,
generations of trauma in your family.
Hey, listen, what do you do? You got to do. My uncle. I had an uncle that would just terrify me as a kid, so that's what I do to my kids. My dad, my mom were pretty level-headed, but I had an uncle who just loved to tease and torture us. And he lived like 4 houses down. He was young. So he was only like 10 or 11 years older than me. So, oh my God, he tortured us. Anyway, all right, moving on. Unintentionally creepy. These are some of the ones I wanted you to talk about because, listen, there is a lot of unintentional creepiness in the Disney parks. So let's talk about a few of those. Absolutely.
So my number one unintentionally creepy one is the Hall of Presidents.
Oh, man.
I used to be terrified of that ride. I still find it very creepy. And the reason for that, I've touched on this before on the podcast, is...
Sorry. This is a little bit of music. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I actually did it. Feel free to play that while I talk because I think it makes me feel kind of presidential. The reason I'm freaked out by that ride is you have sort of like this history of the United States and it's very educational, and then they lift up the screen and you have all the presidents there, and they move.
Yeah.
And it's, some of them move very subtly. It's almost like they weren't meant to move and they're moving. And yeah, and I please, I don't want to sound crude by saying this, but it is a bunch of dead guys, most of them dead.
We got a few. We'll be at 4 or 5 that are alive still. That are
Yeah,
but
I mean, there's 45 of them, and
yeah.
40 of them are dead. And some of them, move. I'm more creeped out with the ones that move very subtly. Especially when the sitting president is giving his speech or Lincoln is giving his speech, you can look around and some of the older ones are, just like moving or shifting a little bit, and I'm like, oh my God, that is so creepy.
Come to life and murder everyone in this audience here. It is a little unsettling to see them, because you're right. They're not moving much. Like you'll see a finger tap their leg or something. You're like, whoa.
Yeah, that's what really gets me. I mean, so much so that I'm not creeped out by moments with Mr. Lincoln, because I think that ride is just one president. I guess I don't know. My suspension of disbelief is more easily triggered with that one because it's one guy. But when you have, one of them talking and the other is sort of shifting in the background, I just find that kind of, unsettling. And the resemblance, because there's so many of them and they're far away enough, the resemblance to the portraits that you've been seeing in history books is quite uncanny.
Yeah, they did a great job with those.
So it is unsettling to see them moving like that. It's almost like seeing the portrait move.
The eyes when you walk through the haunted mansion or something like that. I think Blaine Gibson, who's like a famous Disney sculptor, did everyone up to I want to say Obama. It might have been George W. Bush, and then he was in his 90s and couldn't do them anymore. But he did all the other ones. He did 40, 43 of them. So it's pretty cool that one guy was responsible for doing all that. But yeah, I get it. I get that it can be unintentionally creepy. This is one that my kids don't like because they get a little uneasy about it. So yeah, I think they would agree with you.
I did not know.
Yeah, they would agree with you. They don't like they like animatronics, but I think they like the animatronics that are, I don't know, characters. When it's people, like Pirates is different, Haunted Mansion is different, but this one, yeah, it is a little creepy. It is. All right, what else is on your unintentionally creepy list?
Okay, I find this one terrifying, and maybe it's just me and my husband Alonzo. He's terrified of dolls. Terrified. He does not like dolls.
That's interesting because he's a pretty level-headed dude. Doesn't come off as someone who's irrationally
Chucky,
afraid.
I think traumatized an entire generation.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Who aren't really, who didn't really play with dolls and just were exposed to Chucky at some point, probably too young.
Yeah.
And it's paired with the fact that he has a sister who's very close of age and he doesn't like them. I don't think any of us really likes, depending on the doll, if they're creepy. We don't really. I mean, it can be creepy, but Pinocchio's Daring Journey in Anaheim, California, and in Disneyland. The thing that really gets to me is the beginning of the ride. When Pinocchio is dancing with the two dolls, that first shot. I don't know why anyone finds that cute. I find that terrifying.
That's funny. I thought I don't find it. I do find the attraction creepy for different reasons. That one's never stuck out to me. That part's creepy. But I think that the rest of the ride I find creepy too. But that beginning, which is 100% non-intentional, and that's why I'm bringing it up, and that's why it's also so high on my list of unintentionally creepy, because for me it starts off. We just start off on the wrong foot for that ride, And I'm just always happy when I see the next, guests coming up behind me, and I know I'm not alone anymore. With those dolls, it's a lovely ride. I love the dark rides at Disneyland. I think they're amazing. It's one of my favorite parts of Disneyland is the amount of dark rides. They're all so great. Insane.
but I do have to admit, and I will touch on some other fears that I have with Pinocchio's Daring Journey when I get to number 4 on my list. But I'm trying to save the things that I say specifically, so that this doesn't extend too long. And this thing that I'm about to say, it applies more to my number 4 on the list. But yeah, Pinocchio's Daring Journey for me, I find the whole ride creepy, and I think it's creepy from the get-go, and even when it doesn't mean to be.
Even when it's supposed to be happy.
Even when it's supposed to be happy, exactly.
My problem with Pinocchio, and I've talked about this before in the show, is, and it's not the ride, it's not the attraction, it's the story in general, is that Geppetto, all he wants is a kid. That's all he wants. And then he gets a kid, the blue fairy, turns a puppet into his child, and he has a living, breathing kid, and like 6 hours later, he sends him to school by himself. He doesn't spend any time with him. Like, he's like, you know what I mean? He doesn't even get to know the kid.
He was made of wood yesterday. What's he doing going to school?
he's like, yeah, you know what? You'll be fine. Here's a cricket. The cricket knows right from wrong. Go ahead, go to school. And then he gets into trouble, and then he sends him, like, he does it again. Like, he doesn't, anyway. Pinocchio doesn't learn. He doesn't. Yeah. And Geppetto is just a horrible.
Then we have to go in a whole discussion about Pleasure Island and what the hell is with that. And, where are the consequences? Did the kids just stay enslaved forever as donkeys, or how did that work out?
It seems like it, right? Like, he's the only one that gets away. Everybody else, all the other poor kids, forget it.
It's just
decisions and
very disturbing.
Now, when you watch that movie, if you watch it on Disney Plus or if you watch it on DVD, there's a warning about drinking and smoking in the beginning of it.
Oh, really?
I thought was really funny. Like, we put it on for the kids. My kids, when they watched it, we were driving to Walt Disney World, and we had the DVD, and I put it on in the car. And while we're driving, when it was over, Alexa was like, Dad, why did you show us that? I was like, what do you mean? She's like, that was horrifying. I was like, it kind of is. It's really freaky for a little kid. It's a scary movie. So, no, I'm sorry.
I do know there are some channels that do theories, and there's one that did an estimate of how many children get enslaved in Pleasure Island per year, and how much,
oh my God.
What is the profit of having a theme park that you then allow a bunch of kids to destroy, only to then sell those kids as slave donkeys.
Oh my God. This is people have way too much time in their hands to make something like that.
Yeah, it's very disturbing. The more you think about Pinocchio, it's actually just...
It's horrible.
It's horrible. It's just not my cup.
But it's a movie I will watch, and I love it, and it has, really endearing, memorable characters. Like, but we don't have to. I don't want to keep talking about this.
Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah,
Jiminy Cricket is legendary. You can't have you can't be a Disney fan without knowing who Jiminy Cricket is.
It's true. And he sings "When You Wish Upon a Star." I mean, he is.
Yeah, and "When You Wish Upon a Star," of course. It's just
It's the Disney song, but like the movie there's more villains in that movie than any other Disney movie. So Honest John and Gideon, obviously villains. The Coachman, obviously a villain. Stromboli, villain. Monstro, villain. They're all you have all these villains, and anyway, we could talk about this all day. There's some serious psychology.
It's more like a Stephen King book than it is a Disney movie.
It did a number on me, obviously, as a child, and I put my poor children through the same thing. All right. Let's move on. So how many do you have left on your not so creepy? Or your creepy?
I have 3 more. I have 5 of each, but I'll go by them pretty fast right now because I have less to say. Like Pinocchio's Daring Journey, I have less to say about all of them. Really, it's quite straightforward from here. Mr. Toad's Wild Ride is my next one.
Yep.
I think though that you can probably understand why it's creepy and the way it ends. I don't really understand. To be fair, I haven't seen the movie in a really, really, really long time, and I don't remember it much. And I deliberately came into this podcast without looking.
Sorry, just playing a little Mr. Toad's behind you.
No, absolutely. And I love the song as well.
It's merrily, merrily, merrily on our way to nowhere in particular. Is that what they say? Yeah. Yeah. I haven't seen the movie in a long time either. I remember watching it as a kid. It was on one of those, my grandfather taped it with his VCR off of like Disney, like the Sunday night Wonderful World of Disney, and it was like the only kid movie he had, so we would watch it every time I went there when I was a kid. But it is, this is one. My kids, again, when we've gone to Disneyland twice with them, they're totally creeped out by that. Totally creeped out by it. It ends in hell.
Exactly. It just ends in hell.
Like, how many attractions?
And it's sort of a dark ride, and there's this glow to the characters as well. That just, it really creeps me out. Like, the ride starts off creeping me out, but I'm on board. But, then it just ends, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I just stayed in hell then.
Yep.
I don't know. Like, it's just a very, very weird ride. I love it. It's one of my favorites, but it's just really creepy. I don't really understand it very much.
Like, I think, like, correct me if I'm wrong, J. Thaddeus Toad drinks and drives, right? Obviously, That's what happens. And ends up getting into an accident, and then he dies because he gets hit by a train.
It's a trial first.
Right. So what's he on trial for? Was he on trial for drinking and driving? I can't remember.
I don't remember either, but the ride I find very confusing. It's just...
But it's still, this is one that I think people kind of romanticize in Walt Disney World. Like, Walt Disney World fans are like, oh, well, they got rid of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. And it was different in Walt Disney World. But when you do it, there were like there were two different tracks, there were two different ways you could go. It was a little different, but the premise of the ride was the same. And I don't, when I ride it in Disneyland now, I rode it last week or 10 days ago. I went and it was, a 20-minute wait. So I was like, I'll wait for Mr. Toad. And every time I go on it, I'm like, it's just weird. Like, it's really weird. And it's creepy, and it's a strange attraction.
It is very strange. I think I have to admit, the two things I most like about it: the name, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. I love it.
That's awesome.
And the music. And I do enjoy the ride, but it's so weird. I don't know. I can imagine the younger kids going on that and being like, what?
Oh, no, it's absolutely right. All right. So yeah, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride is it's for sure up there on the creepy meter, I guess I can say. I should have done that from the beginning. I should have had a creepy meter and gave a number to each one.
Oh yeah, that would have been good.
That's what a professional podcaster would have done. Not somebody like me. All right. So you have two more. Let's hear them.
Well, number 4, and I mentioned this one in relation to number 2. It's a Small World.
I knew it was coming.
It's actually quite low on my list. It was one of the first ones I thought about. But here's why it's not higher. I don't think, at least me personally, I don't think the ride itself is creepy the way it is presented. I do think, though, and this is where my mind wanders a little bit. If you lose sound for a second, or if the music slows down, or if the animatronics stop working, or if you just picture yourself in that ride at night where it's turned off, I think it's the creepiest thing in the world.
Yeah. Did you happen to listen to my episode I did with Ridley Pearson, who wrote?
I probably did listen to that one, but I don't recall. Was it a long time ago?
Yeah, it was a while. It was a couple of years ago. He's the one that wrote the Kingdom Keepers series.
Okay.
And I don't know. Yeah. Have you read those books?
No, I have not.
So in the first one, and spoiler alert if you haven't read Kingdom Keepers, but you should read them because they're excellent books. They really are. For a Disney nerd, and I know you're not a tween, I read them as a 39-year-old adult and thought they were awesome. So, and I was thinking about doing that. So I was thinking about reaching out to him to see if I can read a couple chapters each night on Facebook Live to Disney kid fans. I think that would be fun. I'm going to actually write that. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So in the book, there's a part where the characters are riding through It's a Small World at night, and the dolls attack them. So the idea of the book is that things come alive. So the animatronics come in the parks in Magic Kingdom all come alive at night. So to prepare to write that part, he had unbelievable access to Walt Disney World at night when the park's closed.
Oh.
So he had a cast member turn all the animatronics off, turn all the lights off, the music off, and ride through It's a Small World in the pitch black.
Oh my
so
God.
we could know what that was like. And he went through twice in the dark. And I had him on a podcast, and he swore that he wasn't kidding, that he saw a doll move out of the corner of his eye. And I was like, and I asked him, I was like, you're kidding. And he was like, Phil, I swear to you that it moved. He said that gave me it gave him the idea for that part of the book. So I can see it. Do you remember in the White Room, the finale room, there's a balloon with two clowns in it?
Yeah.
And the one had this, now the clown has these days, the clown has a smile, but back, I don't know, 10 or 8 years ago or so, the clown had a sad face and he had a sign that said help.
Oh, really? Is that true?
That's true.
Oh my God.
That's real. I know, right? So you want to talk about unintentionally creepy. Somebody did that on purpose and put that darn clown in there. And
oh my
clowns
God,
are creepy
I'm
as
going to look this up afterwards.
I'll send you the picture. I have it on my computer.
Oh my God, that is very creepy.
It is.
I was thinking, I don't think you could pay me to go on that ride at night with everything turned off.
I don't think I can do it either. No.
It's incredibly creepy. So yeah, the reason why it's not high on my list is that I don't find it creepy when I'm on it. It doesn't creep me out. I mean, I don't think about that. But if anything happens, if there's any glitch on that ride to change the exact format it's in, I think it could be the scariest ride easily. I think it could terrify hundreds of people.
I agree. It could be. I just sent it to you. For some reason, it didn't go through as an image. I'm going to try to send it again. There we go. Now it's going to come through. You'll see it. It is a creepy, creepy attraction. And now you can see, I guess it wasn't in a white room. It was in one of the other rooms. But you'll see the clown with the help sign. And it's really creepy.
Yeah. Right. Wow. Yeah. No, I had never heard that. That is incredibly creepy. And I think that if that would do it for me. If I were on that ride and I saw that. Oh, there it is. I can see it now. What you sent me. Yeah. If I were on the ride and I saw that, I would be really freaked out.
Yeah, it's creepy. All right, what's your last one? You got to end it with a bang. What's your fifth unintentional Disney creepy attraction?
So my fifth unintentional, it's really, really fast. Country Bear Jamboree. And for one reason,
I disagree with you.
What?
I disagree with you completely. But go ahead.
No, the show itself is not scary. I'm just putting this out there in homage to all the people who get a huge fright when the animal heads on the wall start talking.
I love those guys. They used to be from the mile-long bar right next door, and then they were moved into the attraction. Sorry, wait. I don't know if you can hear our buddy singing. Blood on the sand. So it was Max. What are their names? Max, Buff, and I forget the third guy's name. But yeah, they were in the show, and then there were three other heads in the mile-long bar next door, which is now Pecos Bill. But you could leave the show and they were talking, and then when you would go into the mile-long bar, they would be there as well, and they would be talking to you as you were getting.
Was it in the 90s? Because I think I remember that.
Yeah, I think when they expanded Pecos, when they refurbished Pecos Bill, I forget let me look it up. Pecos Bill expansion. Let's see. It happened in. Yeah, it was there until. Oh man, I can't find it. I think the 90s is right though, because I remember seeing the mile-long bar when I was there on my first trip in 91 or 92 it was. So yeah, oh no wait. The poor listener right now is like, "What, dude? Will you please leave it alone?" 1998 it closed. Yes, it was there in into the 90s.
Okay, that's a yeah. So I do because I do remember they were right on the other side, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that very well.
And
I
there was
remember
mirrors
that.
on either side of
I
the
was
bar that
I
made
was
it look
never
like it was
scared
a
of
mile
that, but
long.
sorry,
No, I
sorry,
was
Phil, I
saying,
totally cut you off.
no,
You can have
you're totally fine.
that part out.
No, you're totally fine. Nah, we don't edit. I don't edit here. There were mirrors on either side of the bar, and it gave the appearance that the bar was actually a mile long because you would look in either direction, and there were mirrors, and it made it look like it was super, super, a huge bar. And now where the extra kiosks are to order at Pecos Bill, that's where the mile long bar used to be.
Yeah, and you totally rebooted my memory there. I had no clue. I did not remember, but now I do. Yeah, I do. I do think I have seen people jump when they start talking, and I do think the concept is a little creepy of dead animal heads on the wall. And they start talking, even though they look kind of cartoonish. So again, they're not scary per se.
They're adorable.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I love the show. I've seen your podcast on that. That episode was also quite a while ago, but I remember your episode on the Country Bear Jamboree. And yeah, I agree with you. The lyrics to the songs are so funny.
Oh my God, so good.
Such an entertaining show. But I do find, and I struggled because the unintentionally creepy ones, there's some very clear ones for me and others where I think there are concepts that are kind of weird. And this one, fifth place, I struggled. I was between Country Bear Jamboree for the heads and I discarded It's Tough to Be a Bug because I actually think that one falls sort of like in the Pirates of the Caribbean category where it is intentional. It is intentional. So I decided not to go there.
Oh, It's Tough to Be a Bug terrifies people on purpose. The poor kids whose parents took them in there and they didn't know how scary it was going to be. Man, my kids once in a while will do it, but they still at 7 and 9 get really freaked out when the smoke fills the room and the spiders come down from the ceiling and then you get stung on the back by the bees and oh man, as soon as the spiders drop down, the whole theater starts screaming. You hear all the little kids crying. It's horrible, but it's fun at the same time.
It is complicated. My family, fun fact, when my sister was 4, we actually got some Kilimanjaro Safari fast passes or something because my sister was so absolutely terrified. A cast member first felt sorry for my dad mostly. So yeah, she gave us a Kilimanjaro Safari pass all the way to the front of the line. I don't remember if they had fast passes back then or if it was just they just let us in. I don't recall, but we got some Disney magic out of that.
That's awesome. Well, listen, this was a lot of fun, and thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing.
It was great.
Oh, and it was fun to share your memories and get to talk about this stuff. And I like doing a show like this so far away from Halloween because I like being reminded of the creepiness that is actually in the parks all the time. So
all the time.
Yeah, it's awesome. So I wanted to mention that you are a vacationeer on the Ear to There travel team. So, and you speak like 26 languages. So if people are looking for someone to help book their trip and English, like you don't want to come to me, or maybe you just like Carol a lot better than you like me, you should look her up. What's your email address if people want to get in touch with you?
So it's carolina.jatene@eartodaretravel.com.
And that's JATENE, right?
Yeah,
so
that is
spell it out
me.
for people.
So I speak French, Spanish, and Portuguese aside from English.
There you go.
So
that's awesome.
not exactly 26 languages, but
I rounded up. I just rounded up.
Give me a boost, Phil.
Yeah, why not? So get in touch with Carol if you want to. Listen, I got to be honest. You've brought in a lot of business since you came on the team. I really appreciate you, and the fact that you're a part of the team is such a big part of it. So thank you so much, and thank you for coming on. This was awesome.
Thank you very much, Phil. This has been great. Anytime you want to talk Disney, I'm in.
Yeah, we'll do it again soon.
Thank you very much, Phil.
Ear to there, ear to there.